Hello everyone, welcome to Getting Started with Blender 3D. So Blender is an open source animation application. It's completely free. It can be argued Blender is not as good as Maya, Cinema 4D, or any of the Adobe applications, but it's a great program to start exploring animation. So this video is directed at absolute beginners. We'll be covering how to download Blender, how to get around in Blender, frame rates, keyframes, and we'll be doing this at the end of the video by making a simple animated 3D text. Okay, let's talk about how to download and install Blender 3D. All you need to do is go launch your web browser, go to blender.org, and click on the latest version of Blender. In this case, it's Blender 2.83.2 LTS. And you select your version. It's available for Windows, Mac, or Linux, even Steam. So we'll just go ahead and click on the Download Blender. And you'll need to select a location for it. And wait for it to finish downloading. Okay, we've got Blender downloaded and installed. So really the first thing we need to do here is just open it up. So I'm going to go to my applications folder. I'm going to find Blender and just double click. And there you go, there's Blender. We need to get rid of the splash screen, so we just click anywhere outside the splash screen and now it's ready to use. All right, this is what we're looking at, the 3D viewport. The default cube shows up every time you open a new scene. It's highlighted orange because it is selected. This rectangle with the perspective lines coming out of it represents the 3D camera. If I left click on it, it's selected and highlighted. This orb represents the light in the scene. So anytime you left click on something, it will highlight. Now what you're going to see on my screen that is not on your screen is a black box with the diagram of a mouse. That is for you guys, so that you can see what buttons I'm clicking and what keystrokes I'm hitting. So that will help you guys follow along. Okay, let's talk about how to navigate the view here. All I have to do is click and hold the center mouse button and drag. That will change the view. So let's talk about the tilde key. Sometimes people don't know what I mean when I say tilde. Under the escape key on the upper left-hand side of the keyboard is a lazy curve. That's the tilde key. I often mispronounce it tiddly, so when I say tiddly, just know that I mean tilde key. If I want to get a specific view, I hit the tiddly button under the escape key to get a pie menu. Pie menu has a list of all the different ways you can view this scene. If I hit the top, I look at the top. If I look at the front, I look at the front, right, and camera view. So the camera view represents what's going to be rendered when I hit render. This is, if you do an animation or just do a still image, this view is what gets rendered. All right, let's take a quick second to talk about the number pad. On most keyboards on the right-hand side, there is a number pad. Not all keyboards have it, but if you do, those are shortcuts for views. So if I hit the number 1 on the number pad, I get the front view. Number 3 gives me the right view. And hitting the center of the period button or the decimal button zooms into what is selected. Hitting home views everything in the scene, so you can zoom out real quick. If you don't have a number pad, you can select frame selected from the view on the upper left hand corner. Let me zoom in there for you. There we go. So select view and a drop down menu will come down. Frame all will zoom out so you can see everything in the scene. frame selected zooms into what's just selected. The scroll button on the mouse zooms in and out also. Honestly, you'll use this more than anything else. So how do we move things around? Well, if you select the default cube and hit G for grab and move your mouse around, you can move the object. It's locked to the cursor. If I don't like where I put it, then I right click and it'll bounce right back to where it started from. If I hit G and move the mouse around again, and this time I decide I like where it's at, well, I left click and it will commit to the position. If I change my mind, I can undo. On a Mac, it's Command Z, and on probably Windows and Linux, it's probably Control Z. But you can do up to 32 undos in Blender 3D by default. And you can move anything around in this manner. A light, the camera. I'm going to move the light around. Hit the G key for grab. Move the mouse around. Hit the camera. Hit the G key. Move that around. I can also rotate objects. To rotate an object, select it, hit the R key, and move the mouse around. Let's go to the top view. I'm going to hit the tiddly key, select top view. And this represents the red line and the green line represent the X and the Y axis. X left or right, Y back and forth. So that's the two-dimensional plane there. The third plane there is the Z axis, which is up and down. If I go to the front view, I can see it represented by a blue line. So I have the X axis, left and right, and up and down going with the Z axis. Let's say I want to move just along the X axis, left and right. I hit G, and then I hit X. And now if I move the mouse, it will only lock to the X axis. If I want to move back and forth, I hit G, and then Y for the Y axis, and it is locked to the Y axis. If I would just want to move it up and down, I hit G, and I hit Z, and it is only locked to the Z axis. Same thing with rotation. If I want to rotate around the Y axis, then I hit R and Y, and will only rotate around that axis. Same thing with rotate on the X axis by hitting X, or rotate along the Z axis, so I hit Z. And same thing with scale. To scale something, it's the letter S for scale. Hit the letter S key, and I can scale. I can also scale around a specific axis. So I'm going to do it over the Y axis, scale Y. Now scale X. Now scale Z. All right, let's do a quick animation. Before we go into that, we're going to need to talk about some certain concepts here. The bottom row here that shows the numbers 1 through 250, that's the timeline. So it does not mean 250 seconds, it means 250 frames. Well, so if we look over here in the properties panel on the right hand side, there is a frame rate drop-down menu. That is set at 24 frames per second. That's the standard frame rate for film. So 24 frames for every 1 second. So that is the default for Blender 3D. There's some other frame rates there. They're not worth getting into right now. There are reasons why you would do that, but that's a different show. So let's look at the timeline again. By the way, guys, you can adjust the view of the timeline by hovering over the border of between the timeline and the 3D view and dragging it up. So if you're not seeing what you're seeing on my screen, you can adjust that view. So let's start animating. I've got the default cube selected. I'm at frame 1. And I'm going to mouse over the 3D viewport and press the letter I on the keyboard. That gives me the insert keyframe menu. I'm going to select location. If you look at the timeline, there's a little star over where the frame 1 playhead is. That represents a keyframe. And let's go to, let's say 120. So 120 frames later, I want to move it to a different position. So I'll press the G key, drag it somewhere else, I for insert, and set the location. Now a keyframe in the timeline has been set at 120. Let's jump all the way to 250 frames. Press the G key, drag it somewhere else, press I, set location. Now if I press the space bar to play, so what's happening here is it's going to the keyframes that I've set for the location, and it's filling in the frames in between. So I don't have to do frame by frame animation. I can just set keyframes and let Blender do the rest. Okay, now that we've done a quick animation, let's start a new file. To start a new file, go to the upper left-hand corner of the application where File is, and you'll get a drop-down menu. I'm going to select New, and I'm going to select General. This will start a new general file. And there we are, back to our default settings. Okay, now that we've gone over the basics, let's do something fun. We're going to make a 3D title. So with the default cube selected, I'm going to hit X. Now that's gone. To add a new object, I hit Shift A. So this gives me a bunch of options, a new mesh, curves. We're going to go straight to text. If I add that, it adds text. Let's go to the top view by hitting the tiddly button. Let's view selected to zoom in. If it's too close, I'm going to zoom out. Now I need to edit this. So I'm going to hit the tab key and go into edit mode. If you're not sure if you're in edit mode or object mode, right there, it will tell you if you're in object mode or in edit mode. You can also select edit mode that way. But the shortcut to it is the tab button under the tiddly key. And there, bam, it goes into edit mode. Now I'm going to use the backspace button there and type in new text. Okay. I'm going to hit the tab button, go back into object mode. Let's look at the properties panel. So that's the panel on the right. Here on the property panel on the right is an A tab. I'll zoom in there for you. So that is the object data property for the text. If I select that, the menu changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want this to be 3D. Right now it's flat. So under geometry, I'm going to hit this extrude and draw that out, and it extrudes the text for me. But now it's kind of flat on its back, and it's kind of off to the right. Under alignment, under horizontal alignment, I'm going to hit center, and that pops it to the center. And under vertical, I'm going to hit center also, and that pops that to the center. But it is laying on its back. So what I want to do is rotate it 90 degrees. Now there's a couple of ways I can do this. I can hit R along the x-axis, so I'll type X, and now I'll type 90 on the regular number. There we go, and that rotated it for me. Let's undo that real quick. An alternate way to do that is I can push the N key to bring up this toolbar, and under the item tab, I get all these different things that I can modify. Like I said, we wanted to rotate along the x-axis, so under rotation X, Y, and Z, I'm going to select the X field and type in 90 there, and that will also rotate it on the 90-degree axis for me. To get rid of this panel, this number panel here, hit N again, and it will just slide back into the shelf. Here, let's make it blue. So in the properties panel, there's a little globe that represents the materials property right there on the right. I'm going to select that, and there is no shading for it. There's no material for it. Add that little plus button, make a slot for a new material, and then make a new material. And by default, it just names it material. You can rename it. I'm just going to call it blue. Not that it really matters. It does help keep things sort of organized. So under these property panel here, I can select the base color to be blue. And okay, so nothing happened. Why is that? Because we're looking at it in a shaded solid view. So up here on the upper right hand corner of the viewport are the different ways to view your scene. We'll go over these real quick. So right now it's set to viewport shading solid. So that is just showing you the object, not the shading. So if I select the wireframe view, it'll give me a 3D representation in wireframe. This is very classic view. That's the way things used to always look back in the day. And right now I'm going to select this view right here. That is the shading view. This will give us a representation of how it's textured or shaded. So if I select that, there it is. It's blue. Just to real quickly go over this final view here. It sort of looks like the view with that looks transparent. That is actually the rendered view. This will give us a rough representation of how it's going to be rendered right with the current settings. So yeah, it's blue. It looks weird because the light is behind it. Go to the top view real quick. So the light is kind of behind it and to the right. So it's going to show us the shadows also. We'll get back to this later. So we're going to stay in shaded view. And there we go. We have our shaded text. So let's start by moving the camera. Now there's a couple of different ways I can move the camera. I can select it, hit G, hit R, and try to rotate the position and mess around with it in a very convoluted way. But this is kind of cumbersome. If you look in the viewport, you keep having to jump over to the viewport to see what's going on. I'm going to show you guys a trick on how to align your camera real quick. So let's go to the front view, zoom in a little. Yeah, let's jump over to the front view again. And let's do this. Right up there, there's a view. If I select that, I get a drop-down menu. And I can align view and align active camera to view. What that means is that it's going to take the current view and align the camera to it as best as it can. Bam. So it snapped the camera to that view. Let's zoom out again. There we go. Not great, not centered, but the camera is selected, so I can hit the N key to bring up the number panel. And let's see, I want to move it to the left a little bit. So if I click and drag on the X location, it drags it, drag it to the center, and it is too close. So I want to move it back on the Y axis. So if I drag around the Y-axis there, I can reposition that. Okay, so that's the view that's going to happen when it's rendered. If I want the quick representation of what the render is going to look like, I can just click on the rendered view. Don't really like that light where it is, so let's move the light around. Highlight the light. Let's go to the top view for a second. Move that. Let's move, we want it in front. There we go. Little better. Not bad. G. There we go. All right. Move it in front there. Let's look at it through the camera view. Not bad. Okay, so let's go with that. If I go up to the menu on the upper left-hand corner where it says render, I can render image. And a new window pops up on what it looks like as a rendered image. Not happy with the gray background, so let's do this. Right here we're on the properties panel on your right. Zoom in again. We get this globe. Looks like the Earth with the axis going through it. We'll select that. That is the world properties. That's why it's represented that way. And right now we have some properties we can change here, which is the background, and it's got a color set to it. Let's set that all the way down to black. There we go. Now it's completely black. Let's render it again. There we go. A nice little 3D title. I really wanted an animated 3D text where the letters fly at you like in a movie trailer. Well, that's easy to do. So we're going to select our text object. This is going to be easier if we go into shaded view. There we go. Selected the text object, and I've still got the number transform panel up. Remember, you can do that by hitting N. And I'm going to animate Dr. Geek Nerd flying at the camera. So it's going to move towards the camera. So at frame 1, actually before this, we're going to look at 250 frames for 24 frames per second. That's about, that's over 10-second animation. Let's make it a 3-second animation. So down here on the lower right-hand corner of the viewport, just above the timeline, right there, that's the total length of the animation. It's going to start at frame 1 and at 250. So here's a little tip. I'm going to click on the end frame there, and I'm going to change that to a 3-second animation. So what's cool about Blender is each number field acts like a miniature calculator. So I can type 24, which is the frame rate. That's how many frames are in 1 second. I want 3 seconds, so I multiply 24 by 3, and the new end frame is going to be 72. So it's going to end at frame 72. We do have a problem here. It's still going, the view is still going all the way to 250, even though it shows on your left hand here that it's only going up to 72. So let's zoom in there, and the easiest way to do that is to click View over the timeline. So right there, View. If I click that, I get this menu, and if I select View All, it'll just frame those 72 frames. On a number pad, I can just hit Home, and that will also do the same thing. You can also zoom out with the zoom in and out with the scroll button. So I'm going to hit Home on the number pad, and that will frame everything. I'm going to drag up here at the border between the timeline and the viewport to bring that up there so we can see better. All right, let's get into animation. So with Dr. Geek Nerd selected in the viewport, I'm going to go up to these number controls here, and I'm going to start the animation like right there where it's sitting at. I can hover over the Y location and press the I key to insert a keyframe. So you can see here that it's turned yellow. That means there's a keyframe set there. And if I look at the timeline, I can see that a keyframe has been set at frame 1. Okay, now I can click and drag this towards the camera. If I hit G, and I want to move back and forth so it's along the Y axis, so I hit the Y key and move the mouse around. What we really want to do is have a little more control over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump all the way to the end of the timeline of frame 72. So make sure the playhead is at frame 72, and I'm going to drag here in the number pad on the the transform properties right there. I'm going to drag that along the Y axis right there. Zoom out, and I'm going to keep dragging. Whoops, wrong direction. It's going to go negative until it goes past the camera. And I'm going to press the I key to create a new keyframe. And if we look down here at the playhead at frame 72, it's entered a new keyframe. If I hit the spacebar, great. Now let's look at it from the rendered view by going up here to the upper right hand corner and selecting that viewport. This is a good time to talk about the shortcut on how to get to that. If I hit the Z key, I get another pie menu, and I can look at this animation. I'm not going to see anything because it's past the camera. Let's go back to frame 1 real quick. If I hit the Z key and select Wireframe, it will show me the wireframe representation of the animation. And let's hit the space bar. There it goes towards the camera, and it goes past the camera. If I hit Z and look at the solid view, there we go. We got our our gray solid view back. There it goes past the camera again. If I hit Z and hit material preview, there's the material shaded view. Going past the camera, and we want to look at it from the rendered view. There it goes. The light's going to change as it goes past the light. Let's look at it from the camera view by hitting Tiddly and selecting camera, and hit the space bar, and there it goes. If you don't want it to go dark, right here at that frame, just move the light back. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to jump over to hit Z and go to solid view real quick. And yeah, let's move that light source all the way back here. How does that affect our animation? Go to rendered view real quick. There we go. And it goes past the camera. Okay, now we want to save this. How do we export this animation out to a video clip for, say, something we're making in YouTube? Let's go to output properties. And that, it looks like, for some reason, it looks like to me a printer printing a picture. So if I hit that property, I'm going to get the resolution at which the animation is going to render out at, and it's set to 24 frames per second. The start frame is going to be 1, end frame is going to be 72, and now I just need to tell it how to output. If I leave the settings where it's at, it will go to a secret folder called temp that's going to be hard to find. So I need to tell where to save. So we're going to select a location by hitting that folder icon. Let me go back again. Here at the end is this folder icon. If I hit that, it brings up this window. And now I can choose the location of where to save this. I keep a project drive just for this sort of thing. Okay, that's a good place to start. You can make a new folder by hitting this icon here that looks like a folder plus and with the plus above it. You can make a new folder there. As you can see, it's created a new folder and it's ready to be named. So name it whatever you want. Go into the folder. Now we'll name it title. Be as fancy or unfancy as you want, and we'll hit accept. If we leave things the way they are now, it will render as a series of ping images, which is fine. There are reasons why you would want to do that. In this particular reason, it's just a simple 3D animation. Not a lot of texture, not going to eat up a lot of computer space, so it should render pretty fast. So I'm going to change, I'm going to click on this ping menu, or where it says file format menu, and it'll give me a drop down menu. My choices here are many. I'm going to select FFmpeg video. So it's going to run through a video process. There's a little sort of list icon there. There's some presets there. Let's select H.264 and MP4 format. Okay, so that will fill out a lot of settings for us. We can leave it, the container at MPEG-4. We can leave the codec at H.264. I actually don't see a lot of things to change. You might want to change the quality output from medium to high. And all right, that all looks good. Now's a good time to save this file. So we're going to hit Save As. and just navigate to a place where you want to save your project. Make a new folder. Name your Blender file. Hit save. And now we're ready to render. That we did this because if the application should crash for whatever reason, or there's a power surge and your computer shuts down, you don't want to start all over again. So now we're going to go to the render panel up there on the upper left, right there, that render option, and I'm going to select render animation. Now the animation will go frame by frame until it is done. Okay, so it's done rendering. I've closed out the last box that showed the last image of render. I'm going to go up to here where it says render again and get that drop down menu, and right here where it says view animation, I'm going to select that. And it brings up this window of the video. I mean, it's an okay way of looking at it. I usually just jump over to the file, the folder where I saved it, and open it up from there. But there you go. It's done. Well, that's it for this video. Hopefully I was able to show you how to download Blender, the basics on how to get around in Blender, and how to do a basic 3D animation. Thanks for watching.